She was a young soldier, full of promise, serving her country. But behind the gates of Fort Hood, danger didn't come from the battlefield. It came from within. When Vanessa Guillén vanished on April 22, 2020, the Army stayed quiet. Families demanded answers. And then the unthinkable surfaced, her body dismembered near a Texas river. This is not just a story of a crime. It's a story of betrayal, silence, and a system that failed her. Vanessa Guillén, 20, was a Mexican-American soldier from Houston, Texas. Born on September 30th, 1999, to Rogelio and Gloria Guillén of Zacatecas, Mexico, she carried both her family's dreams and her own ambitions with pride. A bright student, she graduated from Cesar E. Chavez High School in 2018, ranking in the top 15% of her class. Full of energy, Vanessa loved soccer, enjoyed jogging, and lived life with a determination that inspired those around her. In June 2018, she joined the United States Army, training as a 91F Small Arms and Artillery Repairer. She was stationed at Fort Hood, the Army's third largest base, a place meant to represent honor and duty. But to her loved ones, Vanessa was more than a soldier. She was the daughter who always called her mother, the sister who filled the house with laughter, the young woman whose drive promised a bright future. Yet Fort Hood carried a reputation few dared to speak aloud. Soldiers vanished. Complaints of harassment went unanswered. Silence lingered in its barracks like a shadow. And soon, that shadow would close in on Vanessa Guillén.
On April 22, 2020, what began as just another day on duty turned into Vanessa Guillén's last. She vanished inside Fort Hood, leaving behind only questions that would ignite a national outcry. But to understand how it came to this, we must step back into the moments that foreshadowed her fate. Before her disappearance, Vanessa confided in her mother, Gloria, that she felt unsafe on base. A particular sergeant, she said, had been stalking her on runs, watching her in the shower, making her feel constantly on edge. Gloria wanted to report him, but Vanessa stopped her. She feared retaliation, not just against herself, but against her mother, who at the time was undocumented and vulnerable. So Vanessa chose to handle it on her own. She planned to report the soldier for adultery, an offense in the Army's code of conduct. But there was a chilling problem. Other women had come forward before, filing harassment complaints against this same sergeant. Each time, their cases were quietly dismissed, swept aside without real investigation. And in that silence, danger was allowed to grow until it consumed Vanessa Guillén.
By the end of the workday, one fact was undeniable. Vanessa Guillén was missing. Her family, frantic with worry, called and texted, but there was only silence. Vanessa wasn't the type to vanish without a word. No call, no text, nothing. Her mother, Gloria, could not understand it. How could a soldier disappear inside a military base filled with cameras, guards, and armed personnel? To her, it seemed impossible. On April 23, 2020, the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Command was formally notified of Vanessa's disappearance. A missing soldier alert was issued to the Fort Hood Military Police. The search had begun.
Investigators confirmed Vanessa had been seen the previous morning, around 10 a.m. on April 22nd, in the parking lot of her unit, the Regimental Engineer Squadron headquarters of the 3rd Cavalry Regiment. She had reported to duty that day, but at some point, she simply vanished. Where had she gone? At what moment did the ground swallow her whole? Investigators turned their focus to the armory where she worked, and there they stumbled upon their first disturbing lead: Vanessa's phone, her car keys, her ID card, her bank card, her wallet, even her barracks key. All of it was left behind inside the armory, as if she had walked in and never walked out.
On that fateful morning, Vanessa Guillén had been assigned just 2 simple tasks. First, she was to inspect and process broken equipment for turning at the headquarters and headquarters troop arms room, the 1st arms room. Second, she needed to verify the serial number on a machine gun stored in A Troop's arms room, part of the Regimental Engineer Squadron. That was the 2nd arms room. At exactly 10:03 a.m., Vanessa reported to the 1st arms room and began her work. Minutes later, she made her way toward the 2nd arms room, located in a nearby building. Inside was her supervisor, Sergeant Aaron Robinson. That was the last confirmed sighting of her alive. At 11:05 a.m., the soldier who had opened the 1st arms room sent Vanessa a text asking when she would return. The message went unanswered. An hour later, at 12:16 p.m., he walked to the 2nd arms room to check on her. But the door was locked. Vanessa was nowhere in sight. Confused, the soldier gathered her belongings from the 1st arms room: her phone, keys, ID, wallet, everything, and placed them back in the armory where she worked. He then contacted her roommate, but the roommate hadn't seen her since she left for duty that morning. It was as if Vanessa had stepped into the 2nd arms room and disappeared. To Vanessa's family, the discovery of her belongings left behind was unthinkable. She would never abandon her phone, keys, and ID. To them, it was the clearest sign yet. Something suspicious had happened. Investigators turned to her phone, hoping it held the missing pieces of her trail. And it did. The last text message she sent pointed directly to one man, Specialist Aaron David Robinson. She had texted him the serial number of the machine gun she was assigned to check. When questioned, Robinson claimed that he and Vanessa exchanged paperwork for a .50 caliber machine gun that required servicing. And then, he said, she left the arms room. According to his version, she was headed to the motor pool, but witnesses at the motor pool insisted she never arrived. Pressed further, Robinson explained that after leaving work, he went to his off-post residence. There, he lived with Cecily Aguilar, his girlfriend, and, notably, the estranged wife of another soldier stationed at Fort Hood. Robinson added that later, around 6:30 p.m., he returned to Fort Hood to use a government computer to enroll in training courses. It was his alibi, but investigators knew better. Piece by piece, his story didn't add up. According to an eyewitness, Vanessa Guillén was seen entering the armory where Specialist Aaron Robinson worked. But there was no account, no witness, of her ever walking back out. Instead, Robinson was spotted struggling to load a large tough box from the armory into his car. Minutes later, he drove away with it. Wait, what was inside that box?
On April 28, 2020, the Army's Criminal Investigation Command brought Robinson in for questioning, but the truth about Vanessa's disappearance remained buried. The search for her escalated, Nearly 1,000 soldiers joined ground sweeps. Cadaver dogs scoured fields. Helicopters and drones scanned the landscape. Yet there was no trace of Vanessa Guillén. 2 days later, on April 30th, Secretary of the Army Ryan D. McCarthy addressed the nation. In a press briefing, he promised the Army's full commitment, vowing, "My heart goes out to her family, and we will not stop looking for her until we find her." But to Vanessa's family, words were not enough. They didn't want sympathy. They wanted answers. Frustrated and desperate, the Guilléns accused the Army of not doing enough to find their daughter. Their pain boiled into action as they stormed the gates of Fort Hood, launching the Find Vanessa movement that would soon echo across the country. On May 18th, 2020, 2 more witnesses came forward. Both recalled seeing Specialist Aaron Robinson struggling with a large, tough box outside the armory, yet no one could say what was inside. The next day, investigators turned their focus to Robinson's phone. They secured the device, hoping a forensic extraction might reveal the trail he had tried to hide. What they found raised immediate suspicion. His call logs showed a flurry of activity, repeated calls to Cecily Aguilar, his girlfriend, throughout the night of April 22. The calls stretched into the early morning hours, some lasting well past midnight, as late as 3:30 a.m., and the communication continued into the following day. On June 19th, Aguilar was brought in for questioning. She told investigators she had been with Robinson the entire night of Vanessa's disappearance. According to her, the calls were nothing more than Robinson trying to help her find her misplaced phone. But her story didn't hold. The records told another tale. Many of the calls after midnight lasted well over a minute, far too long for someone simply calling a lost phone. So if Aguilar's phone was missing, who was picking up on the other end?
The investigation soon took a turn that would send chills down the spine. Data pulled from Robinson's phone revealed a critical lead. At nearly 2 a.m. on April 23rd, his device had pinged near a bridge along the Leon River. It stayed in the area for almost 2 hours. Cecily Aguilar's phone told the same story. She too had been tracked to the Leon River, first on April 23rd, and then again on April 26th. But what were they doing there, under the cover of darkness? Aguilar was summoned for a second interview. Investigators pressed her, "Why were you at the Leon River the night Vanessa disappeared?" Her answer was disturbingly casual. She claimed she had simply gone to a park in Belton, Texas, to, quote, look at the stars. By June 21, 2020, suspicion had hardened into action. The Army's Criminal Investigation Division, working alongside Texas Rangers and the Bell County Sheriff's Office, descended on the Leon River site. What they uncovered was grim. A burn pit, freshly disturbed earth, charred fragments of a plastic tote, the melted remains of a tough box. But of Vanessa Guillén, there was still no sign. On June 30th, 2020, the search for Vanessa Guillén took a chilling turn. A private contractor repairing a fence near the Leon River in Belton, Texas, stumbled upon partial human remains. This discovery came just days after Texas Rangers, detectives, and cadaver dogs had scoured the same area on June 20th, when a suspicious burn mound was found. That earlier sweep turned up nothing. But this time, there would be no denying what lay hidden in the brush. The evidence trail was tightening, and all signs pointed to Specialist Aaron Robinson and his accomplice, Cecily Aguilar. By 8:30 p.m. that evening, investigators pulled her in for yet another interview. The pressure was mounting, and with the new discovery, her walls of denial finally began to crumble. She revealed the horrifying truth. Robinson had confessed to her that he murdered a female soldier with a hammer inside the armory at Fort Hood.
As investigators request, Cecily agreed to make a controlled phone call to Robinson. His words were cold, chilling, and damning. "Baby, they found pieces." Pieces? The kind of word that freezes a parent's heart, the kind of word that confirmed everyone's worst fear. Cecily then recounted how Robinson stuffed Vanessa's body into a box, drove her out to the Leon River, and later picked her up from the gas station where she worked. When Cecily Aguilar arrived, she found a box with wheels and handles already waiting. Robinson led her into the woods, opened the box, and revealed what she later described as a dead woman inside. What followed was almost unspeakable. Using a hatchet and a machete-type knife, the two dismembered the body, attempting to burn the remains before burying them in 3 separate shallow holes. But the horror did not end there. According to cell phone records on April 26, 2020, the pair returned to the site. Wearing hairnets and gloves, Cecily even arranged via Facebook Messenger to buy a bag of what she called concrete. Together, they dug up the remains, burned them again along with their disguises, and reburied the remains mixed with concrete. When news broke that human remains had been found near the Leon River, Robinson panicked. That evening, he slipped away from the watch of an unarmed guard who had been holding him under the pretense of a COVID-19 quarantine violation. But investigators were closing in fast. In the early hours of July 1, 2020, police in Killeen tracked down Robinson before he could be taken into custody to face charges for the murder of specialist Vanessa Guillén. Robinson turned a handgun on himself. The man at the center of Fort Hood's darkest scandal was dead. But the questions, the anger, and the grief were only just beginning.
While Robinson escaped justice through death, Cecily Aguilar was not so fortunate. Texas Rangers arrested her, and she was held at the Bell County Jail. By July 2, 2020, officials announced that Cecily would be transferred to federal custody, facing a charge of conspiracy to tamper with evidence filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of Texas. But even as charges were filed, one haunting question lingered. Why was Vanessa Guillén murdered? The answer would come from Cecily herself. According to her report by the Texas Department of Public Safety, Cecily told investigators that Robinson killed Vanessa after she saw a picture of Cecily on his phone lock screen. Robinson panicked, fearing punishment for violating the Army's strict fraternization rules, since Cecily was still married to another soldier stationed at Fort Hood. In a fit of rage, Robinson struck Vanessa with a hammer multiple times, killing her inside the armory. Court documents further revealed that Cecily, then 25 years old, played a direct role in covering up the crime. She helped Robinson dismember, burn, and bury Vanessa's remains, and later worked to destroy evidence, even tampering with information stored in Robinson's Google account during the investigation. The motive was as senseless as the crime itself. A life silenced not by war or battle, but by secrecy, fear, and a desperate attempt to hide an affair. On November 29, 2022, Cecily Aguilar stood before a Texas courtroom and pleaded guilty. 1 count of accessory to murder and 3 counts of making false statements. Her sentence, 30 years in federal prison. It was a hard, emotional day for the Guillén family. Nearly 3 years after Vanessa's brutal murder, they finally saw Cecily held criminally accountable for her role in the crime.
Yet justice did not erase the pain. Outside the courthouse, Myra Guillén spoke with unshaken grief. There is no sentence, no apology, nothing that will bring back Vanessa. Her mother, Gloria, took a different path. Through tears, she offered a prayer for Cecily. "I hope God forgives you, that God touches your heart and you repent." She reminded the world of who Vanessa was, a tremendous young woman with dreams, ambitions, and a future stolen in silence. For the Guilléns, Cecily's 30-year sentence closed a legal chapter, but not the wound. The pain will forever remain. And yet, Vanessa's name was not buried with her. Her legacy became a movement, one that pushed Congress to pass the I Am Vanessa Guillén Act in 2021, a law designed to reform how the U.S. military handles sexual harassment and assault within its ranks. Vanessa's story is not just of tragedy, but of courage, resilience, and change. A young soldier's life was stolen, but her family refused to let her memory die in silence.